The radio crackled with static as the commander closed the mission folder. No time of probable loss of aircraft and pilot. Rain hammered the command center roof as personnel exchanged knowing glances. No one survived that fire line. Then came the impossible sound, faint rotor beats cutting through the storm. All eyes turned to the radar screen. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories of unrecognized heroes, consider subscribing to join our storytelling community. Rain hammered the command center roof as the tactical display flickered, casting eerie blue light across the grim faces of Forward Operating Base Echo's leadership team. The holographic map showed the catastrophe in stark detail. 23 American soldiers trapped beyond the fire line, the extraction zone, a sea of red warning indicators. Colonel James Mitchell removed his headset and pressed his fingers to his temples. That's 3 Blackhawks down. 3. His voice remained steady, but the muscle twitching in his jaw betrayed his tension. No way anyone's getting through that airspace. Major Phillips nodded solemnly. Last transmission from Alpha Team came 17 minutes ago. They're surrounded on 3 sides, backed against the ravine. He tapped the display, enlarging an area where enemy forces were closing in like a noose. Even if we had aircraft that could make it through, there's nowhere to land. The LZ is completely compromised. The room fell silent, save for the patter of rain and a soft beeping of communications equipment. The unspoken reality hung in the air. They were about to lose 23 soldiers. We should inform command. We've exhausted all extraction options, Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey said already. Reaching for the secure phone, I recommend we note this as a probable total loss and begin preparing next of-kin notifications. From the back of the room, a voice cut through the resignation. I'll take them. Out heads turned to the doorway where a soaked figure stood just inside the threshold. Captain Maya Harrington's flight suit was darkened with rain, her short dark hair dripping onto her shoulders. She'd clearly been standing there long enough to understand the situation, but not long enough to be invited to speak. A few of the enlisted personnel exchanged glances. One nodded almost imperceptibly with what looked like respect. The officers, however, showed nothing but skepticism. Captain Harrington, Colonel Mitchell acknowledged with a slight frown. This briefing is command level personnel only. I was delivering weather updates when I heard about Alpha Team, she said, stepping forward despite the implied dismissal. I know that Terrainer can get them out. A moment of awkward silence followed, broken by a snort from Major Phillips. With what a magic carpet. Phillips gestured to the tactical display. We've lost 3 birds already. The best pilots in the regiment couldn't penetrate that airspace. Maya's eyes never left the colonel's. The supply transport Blackhawk, the one that came in yesterday, I checked it myself. It's airworthy now. There was open laughter from Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey. That old bird, it's got outdated countermeasures and barely passed inspection. It's for rear echelon operations only. It's got the range and I can fly it, Maya insisted, moving to the tactical display. Her finger traced a route that none of the officers had considered. There's a path through these ridges. The enemy anti-aircraft positions can't target effectively through this corridor due to the terrain interference. Colonel Mitchell studied her with narrowed eyes. You seem to know an awful lot about a mission that was just presented to this room, Captain. Behind Maya, someone whispered, just loud enough to be heard. That's Harrington heard. She was grounded after Kandahar. Maya's shoulder stiffened almost imperceptibly at the mention of Kandahar, but her expression remained determined on the display screen. The photo of Alpha Team's leader briefly flashed. Captain Thomas Reeves. Maya's eyes lingered on it for just a moment. Too long. Colonel Mitchell noticed. You know someone down there, don't you? I know they're Americans, sir, she answered evenly. That's enough. Mitchell sighed and rubbed his forehead. Captain Harrington, even if, and it's a big if, you could somehow navigate through those defenses, there's still no landing zone. The primary LZ is hot, and the terrain around Alpha Team's position is unsuitable for landing. I don't need a conventional LZ, Mia replied. I can hover for extraction in that wind under fire. Major Phillips scoffed. That's suicide. I've done it before, Mia said quietly, and something in her tone made the room go still. Colonel Mitchell studied her for a long moment. The tactical display continued to update, showing enemy forces closing in on Alpha Team's position. Time was running out, as I recall, Captain Mitchell said carefully. You're assigned to supply transport duties for a reason. Maya met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir. The unspoken history hung between them. Whatever had happened in Kandahar had relegated a clearly skilled pilot to flying cargo runs. Mitchell's radio crackled with an incoming transmission. Alpha Team requesting emergency extraction. Multiple casualties reported. Enemy closing in from all sides. The voice was strained, desperate. Mitchell looked at Maya, then at his officers, then back at the display. He seemed to age 10 years in those few seconds. It's your funeral, Harrington, he finally said, but at least they'll know we tried everything. He turned to his communications officer. Log that I've authorized Captain Harrington for emergency extraction attempt at her own insistence. Make sure that's clear in the record. Maya nodded once, already turning to leave. I'll need 10 minutes to prep the bird. You've got 5. Mitchell called after her as she left. He added more quietly, that's all the time they've got left. In the hangar, Maya moved with practice efficiency, inspecting the battered Blackhawk helicopter that had arrived yesterday from the rear base. Its olive green paint was chipped and it lacked the advanced systems of the frontline aircraft, but the rotors and engine were sound. Chief Warrant officer. Garcia watched her skeptical as she inspected the helicopter. This bird can barely maintain altitude in good weather, ma'am, let alone fly through that hellfire out there. It'll fly, Mia said, running her hand along the helicopter's flank. She's got one good mission left in her, I can feel it. Garcia shook his head but helped her prepare nonetheless. As they worked, a young mechanic approached hesitantly, holding something in his hand. Captain Harrington. The mechanic couldn't have been more than 19. I heard you're going after Alpha Team. Maya nodded, continuing her pre-flight checks. My brother's with them. Specialist Ryan Dawson. He held out a unit patch. Would you take this for luck? Maya paused, then took the patch, studying the young man's face. The family resemblance was clear. I'll bring him back, she said, tucking the patch into her flight suit pocket. Everyone says it's impossible, the mechanic said quietly. Mia's expression softened slightly. Sometimes impossible just takes a little longer, she returned to her checks, leaving the young man standing there with a mix of hope and fear on his face. As she climbed into the pilot's seat, Maya experienced a flash of memory. Another cockpit, warning lights, flashing red alarms, blaring, someone shouting her name. She pushed the memory away and focused on the present. The past was the past. This was now. Rain pounded against the windshield as she powered up the helicopter. The familiar vibrations ran through the frame as the rotors began to turn, gradually picking up speed until they became a blur above her control. This is Harrington. Request clearance for emergency extraction. Mission. The radio crackled. Harrington, this is Control. Weather's worsening. Last radar showed the fire line has expanded. Be advised, conditions are deteriorating rapidly. Understood, Control. Colonel Mitchell's voice came over the channel for the record. Captain, no one expects you to actually reach them. This is just to show we tried everything. Maya's grip tightened on the controls. Understood, sir. I'll be back in 20 minutes. She could almost see the disbelieving looks being exchanged in the control room. No one believed she would make it. No one except, perhaps, a young mechanic watching from the hangar doorway, clutching a photo of his brother. The Black Hawk lifted off, immediately buffeted by strong winds. Maya compensated automatically, her body remembering the rhythms of flight in ways her mind couldn't articulate. As she climbed, the base fell away below her, lights blurring through the rain ahead. Through gaps in the storm clouds, she could see flashes of light from explosions and gunfire. The fire line that had claimed 3 helicopters already. She adjusted her course slightly, heading for the narrow corridor she'd identified on the tactical display. Control, I'm approaching the fire line. Going radio silent. Copied at Harrington. Godspeed. Maya switched off her radio and focused entirely on flying. The helicopter shuddered as she pushed it hard, riding the air currents through the mountain passes. Visibility deteriorated to near zero as she entered the storm front. She flew by instinct and memory now, feeling her way through. The first anti-fire came without warning, tracer rounds arcing through the darkness. Maya dropped altitude, skimming dangerously close to the ridgeline where enemy gunners couldn't depress their weapons enough to target her. A burst of fire clipped the tail, sending the helicopter into a momentary spin. Maya fought the controls, muscles straining as she forced the aircraft back into stable flight. Come on, girl, she whispered to the helicopter just a little farther. At the base, 15 minutes had passed since Maya's departure. The operations room was silent as personnel watched the clock. Her transponder had disappeared from radar shortly after she'd entered Mountain Pass. It's been 15 minutes. Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey said. No way she made it. Colonel Mitchell nodded. Sadly, no time of probable loss of aircraft and pilot. The radio operator was already making the notation when he paused. Head tilting, sir, he said hesitantly. I thought I heard something. Mitchell looked up sharply. What? Just for a second, sir. Static. But I thought I heard rotor beats. Imagination, Philip said dismissively. Nothing could survive. The radar operator interrupted. Sir, I've got a signature. It's Harrington's. Bird. Outside, through the pounding rain, came the unmistakable thump, thump, thump of helicopter rotors. Personnel rushed outside despite the rain, squinting upward as the unmistakable sound of rotor blades cut through the storm. Through a wall of smoke and rain, the battered Black Hawk emerged, its silhouette unmistakable even in the low visibility. The helicopter was barely flying, paintwork scorched black in places, bullet holes visible along the fuselage, and one rotor blade visibly damaged. I don't believe it, Phillips, whispered rain, streaming down his face as he watched the helicopter struggle to maintain altitude. The Black Hawk was flying erratically now, losing power as it approached the landing zone. The ground crew scrambled to clear the area, waving light wands to guide the damaged aircraft, and Maya fought the controls as the helicopter descended in a barely controlled landing, touching down hard enough to make the landing gear creak in protest. The rotors slowed gradually, and then the engines cut out with a whining groan. For a moment, no one moved. The assembled personnel stared at the scorched Black Hawk, waiting for the side door to slide open, waiting for Maya to emerge triumphant with the rescued soldiers. Colonel Mitchell was the first to move, striding toward the helicopter with a mix of disbelief and relief on his face. Get those medics ready, he called over his shoulder. We likely have wounded. A medical team rushed forward with stretchers. As Mitchell reached the helicopter, he yanked the side door open. The cabin was empty. Mitchell froze, staring at the vacant interior. No survivors, no Maya, just an empty transport bay with a few stray shell casings rolling across the floor. The colonel climbed inside, looking around in confusion, as if the missing personnel might somehow be hiding in the corners. "Sir," called a medic who had circled to the cockpit, "you need to see this." Mitchell made his way to the cockpit. The pilot's seat was vacant. The instrument panel dark except for a few emergency lights. On the seat lay a bloodied American flag folded imperfectly as if done in haste. Beside it on the co-pilot's seat was a handwritten note and a small thumb drive. Mitchell picked up the note, his hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him as he read. The color drained from his face. "Sir." The medic watched him anxiously. "What does it say?" Mitchell didn't answer. Instead, he pocketed the thumb drive and note and climbed out of the helicopter. "Get this bird secured and under guard," he ordered the nearest officer. "No one touches it until I say so." Back in the command center with the door locked and only his most trusted officers present, Mitchell placed the thumb drive into a secure terminal. "What's going on, sir?" Major Phillips asked, still visibly shocked by the helicopter's empty return. "I don't know yet," Mitchell said grimly, "but Captain Harrington sent us something she thought was worth risking her life for." The terminal screen filled with files, satellite imagery, coordinates, communications logs, and mission reports. Most bore classification markers that exceeded Eva Mitchell's security clearance. "What is all this?" Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The intelligence officer, Captain Winters, had gone completely still. "Sir," she said quietly, "these are operations logs from a location that doesn't officially exist." Mitchell turned to her sharply. "Explain." Winters hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "These coordinates," she said, pointing to a location on the digital map there, approximately 2 kilometers beyond Alpha Team's last known position. "There's nothing marked on any of our maps there." "There is now," Mitchell said, opening one of the satellite image files. It showed a compound nestled in a valley well hidden from casual observation. "Who authorized this operation in our AO?" No one answered. No one could. Mitchell turned to the communications officer. "Get me General Hayes' secure channel now." As they waited for the connection, Winters continued examining the files. "Sir," she said after a few moments, "there's something else here. Personnel records." She opened a file and froze. "These are American operatives listed as MIA from various operations over the past 3 years. Mitchell leaned over her shoulder, reading the screen. His expression hardened. "They're not MIA. They're being held at that facility." "By whom?" Phillips asked. Before Mitchell could answer, a memory surfaced. Maya studying the tactical map earlier, her focus not on Alpha Team's position but on another location entirely. He had assumed she was planning her route, but now he understood she hadn't just been looking for a way to the stranded soldiers. "Captain Harrington knew about this," he said quietly. "Somehow she knew." The secure line beeped, indicating General Hayes was waiting. Mitchell straightened his uniform and accepted the call. The general's face appeared on the screen, impatient and slightly annoyed. "This better be important, Colonel. I'm in the middle of a briefing with CENTCOM." Mitchell held up the thumb drive. "Sir, we've received intelligence about an unauthorized detention facility operating within our area of operations. American personnel are being held there." Hayes's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Where did you get this information, Captain?" "Maya Harrington," Mitchell said, watching the general's reaction carefully. "She took a helicopter out on a rescue mission for our stranded Alpha Team. The helicopter returned without her carrying this data." There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long to be natural. "Captain Harrington is assigned to supply transport duties. She has no authorization for combat missions." "I authorized her, sir," Mitchell said. "Given the emergency situation." Hayes's jaw tightened. "That was an error in judgment, Colonel. Captain Harrington was restricted from combat operations after the Kandahar incident." "What exactly was the Kandahar incident, sir?" Mitchell pressed. "Because I'm finding conflicting information in our records." The silence stretched between them. Finally Hayes spoke, his voice lower. "That's classified, Colonel, above your pay grade. With respect, sir, I have 23 stranded soldiers, a missing pilot, and evidence of an unauthorized black site in my AO. I need answers." Hayes's expression turned to stone. "Secure that data, Colonel. Do not access it further. A team will be dispatched to retrieve it." "Am I missing personnel, sir?" "We'll handle the extraction of Alpha Team. As for Captain Harrington," Hayes paused, "she's made her choice again." The connection terminated abruptly. Mitchell stared at the blank screen, then turned to Winters. "Tell me everything about Kandahar now." Winters hesitated, then nodded, pulling up classified files with an override code that raised eyebrows around the room. 2 years ago, Captain Harrington was transporting what were listed as high-value enemy combatants from a forward operating base near Kandahar. Winters explained, displaying the official mission report. "Her helicopter was shot down in hostile territory. According to the report, she was recovered 48 hours later, but the prisoners were lost." "That's the official story," Mitchell said. "Yes, sir." Winters pulled up another file, one that wasn't supposed to exist in their database. "The classified report tells a different story. The prisoners were actually American operatives being transported for enhanced interrogation off the books. When Captain Harrington discovered this, she diverted from her flight plan and attempted to return them to U.S. forces who weren't involved in the black operation. She disobeyed direct orders, Mitchell said, understanding dawning. Yes, sir. She was shot down not by enemy fire but by our own aircraft when she refused to return to course. Winters scrolled through the file. She managed to land the helicopter and keep everyone alive until they were recovered by a coned VENTIONAL search and rescue team. Mitchell picked up the note that had been left in the helicopter and read it aloud for the first time. They weren't the only ones left behind. Compound B clearance needed. Send extraction to these coordinates. In 48 hours the room fell silent as the implications sank in. Wait, Phillips said suddenly. Alpha Team's leader, Captain Reeves, wasn't he part of that search and rescue operation in Kandahar? Winters nodded. Yes, sir. According to these records, he was the one who found Captain Harrington and the operatives. Mitchell's expression darkened with understanding. So when Alpha Team got stranded, she saw an opportunity not just to save them but to expose whatever's happening at that black site. He looked around the room. She knew no one would authorize a mission based on her suspicions alone, not after Kandahar, so she used the emergency extraction as cover. Sir, the radar operator interrupted from his station. I've been analyzing the flight path of Captain Harrington's return. The helicopter was on autopilot. She programmed it to return to base empty. She never intended to come back with them. Mitchell realized she went in knowing she'd stay behind, but why? Phillips asked. Why risk everything again? After what happened last time? Mitchell looked down at the handwritten note, then at the photo of Captain Reeves still displayed on the tactical screen. Because some things you don't leave behind, he said quietly, echoing words Maya had spoken during her debriefing after Kandahar, words that had been struck from the official record but that Mitchell, who had been part of the review panel, still remembered. He turned to his officers. Decision made. Captain Winters, I want everything we have on this black site. Major Phillips, prepare a rescue operation plan. We have 48 hours, sir. Phillips objected. General Hayes explicitly ordered. I know what the general ordered. Mitchell cut him off. I also know that we have American personnel behind enemy lines, both Alpha Team and whatever prisoners are being held at that facility. We're getting them out. As his officers scrambled to obey, Mitchell studied the map, focusing on the coordinates. Maya had provided whatever she had discovered out there had been important enough for her to risk everything again, and this time he wouldn't let her face it alone. The next 48 hours saw Forward Operating Base Echo transform from a standard military installation to the staging ground for a high-risk rescue operation. Colonel Mitchell had made his decision. They would extract both Alpha Team and investigate the alleged black site regardless of General Hayes's orders. Mitchell stood before a tactical display in the newly established operations center, studying the updated satellite imagery that Captain Winters had secured through back channels. Our intelligence confirms 23 heat signatures at Alpha Team's position, which suggests they've all survived so far, Winters reported, and the black site designated Compound B. And Captain Harrington's notes shows approximately 30 additional signatures. Some appear to be guards, others are consistent with detainees and Harrington. Mitchell asked. Winters hesitated. We have one signature moving between the two locations based on movement patterns. We believe it's her. Mitchell nodded, unsurprised. She's coordinating between them, probably trying to keep Alpha Team alive while figuring out how to expose the black site. He turned to the assembled rescue team leaders. You all understand the risks. General Hayes has explicitly ordered us not to pursue this operation. Anyone who participates does so knowing there could be severe consequences. The room remained silent, but no one moved to leave. Good, Mitchell continued. Major Phillips will command the primary extraction team for Alpha Team. Captain Winters will lead a smaller infiltration unit to assess and extract detainees from Compound B. I want minimal signatures until you're on the ground. We go in quiet, we find out people, we bring them home. Questions? A young lieutenant raised his hand. Sir, what about Captain Harrington? Mitchell's expression didn't change, but his voice softened slightly. Captain Harrington is a priority target for extraction. She risked everything to bring us this intelligence. We don't leave her behind. As the briefing concluded and the teams dispersed to make final preparations, Mitchell found himself alone with the mission planning table. He studied the route Maya had taken through the mountains, a path considered impossible until she'd proven otherwise. It would be their way in. As well, sir, Winter said, approaching with a file in hand. I've completed the review of Captain Harrington's service record as you requested. Mitchell took the file, opening it to find Mia's official military photo along with commendations and citations that spanned an impressive career. 3 distinguished flying crosses. Mitchell noted combat missions in 4 theaters, top of her class at flight school. He looked up at Winters. This isn't the record of someone who should be flying supply runs. No, sir, Winters agreed. After the Kandahar incident, someone wanted her sidelined. Her skills were too valuable to discharge her outright, but they made sure she wouldn't be in a position to cause trouble again. She was never grounded for incompetence, Mitchell said. Closing the file, she was silenced. Yes, sir, and there's more. Winters handed over a data tablet. The information she sent proves illegal operations were being conducted, American citizens detained Without charges, interrogation protocols that violate international law all off the books, Mitchell reviewed the evidence, his jaw tightening, and Hayes knew it appears so. Sir, Mitchell handed back the tablet. Make copies, secure copies if anything happens to us out there. I want this information to reach the right people. Yes, sir. 12 hours later, Mitchell stood on the tarmac as 5 Black Hawk helicopters spun up their rotors, slicing through the pre-dawn darkness. Unlike the battered transport Maya had flown, these were combat-ready aircraft with full weapons systems and countermeasures. Mitchell approached the lead helicopter where Major Phillips was performing final checks. You know the route? Mitchell asked. Phillips nodded. Captain Harrington's flight data recorder gave us her exact path. If she made it through, so can we. Good hunting, Major. Mitchell clasped his shoulder. Bring them all home. As the helicopters lifted off and banked toward the mountains, Mitchell returned to the command center to monitor the operation. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the missing soldiers and detainees, but potentially his own career and those of everyone involved in the unauthorized rescued. The 5 Blackhawks followed Maya's mapped route, hugging the terrain just as she had done. They encountered sporadic anti-aircraft fire but managed to evade the worst of it thanks to her detailed intelligence. At the landing coordinates, the helicopters touched down in a tight formation, disgorging their teams in well-rehearsed maneuvers. Phillips led Alpha Team's extraction while Winters headed toward the hidden compound with her specialized unit. What they found exceeded even their preparations. Alpha Team was not simply surviving, they were defending a position that Maya had helped them fortify. Captain Reeves, the team leader, had established a perimeter using natural features and salvaged equipment. Inside this defensive position were not just his soldiers but 17 additional personnel, the detainees Maya had helped escape from Compound B, and there was Maya herself, injured but standing, directing a makeshift triage center for the wounded. When the rescue helicopters appeared, she straightened up and approached Major Phillips, blood staining one side of her flight suit, but her gaze steadier. 43 minutes early, Major, she said, the ghost of a smile crossing her face. Phillips stared at her in amazement. How the hell did you pull this off, Harrington? Before she could answer, Captain Reeves joined them, moving with a slight limp. She dropped out of the sky like some kind of avenging angel, he said, looking at Maya with open respect. Sat down right in the middle of an active firefight, loaded as many of us as could move, then flew us to this defensible position. Then she left us to secure the site while she went back for the rest. Another soldier added, made 3 trips under heavy fire after that. She somehow knew about the compound nearby, said there were more Americans being held there. Maya said nothing, letting them tell the story. She infiltrated the compound alone, Reeves continued, came out with the first group of detainees before we even knew what was happening. By the time we organized to help, she'd already mapped the entire facility and identified all the security weaknesses. Philip shook his head in disbelief. 1 U-woman extraction team. Just doing my job, sir, Maya said quietly. Your job was flying supply runs, Captain, Phillips reminded her, but there was no rebuke in his tone, only respect. My job is bringing our people home, she corrected him. All of them. As the rescued personnel were loaded onto the helicopters, Winters returned from her reconnaissance of Compound B. The facility is cleared, sir, she reported to Phillips. We've downloaded their systems and secured evidence of the operation. It appears they were running unauthorized interrogations on both foreign nationals and American citizens. Phillips nodded grimly. We'll let headquarters sort that out for now. Let's get these people home. Maya was the last aboard, pausing at the helicopter door to look back at the compound in the distance. Phillips studied her thoughtfully. You knew about this place before the mission, didn't you? That's why you volunteered. Maya met his gaze. I had suspicions after Kandahar. I started noticing patterns, personnel who disappeared, operations that never made it into official records. She glanced at Captain Reeves. When I saw Alpha Team was stranded so close to one of those suspected locations, I couldn't ignore it. You risked court-martial. Worse, some risks are worth taking. 3 days later, back at Forward Operating Base, Echo Colonel Mitchell stood in his office reviewing the after-action reports. The evidence recovered from Compound B had already been transmitted to multiple secure locations, including the offices of the Inspector General and selected members of Congress. General Hayes had been quietly relieved of command pending investigation. A knock on his door interrupted his reading. Maya Harrington entered, her arm in a sling, but otherwise recovered from her ordeal. You wanted to see me, Sir. Mitchell gestured for her to sit. I received word from command this morning. Your actions in Kandahar have been officially reclassified. Your record has been amended to show you acted with extraordinary heroism in the face of grave danger. He slid a document across the desk there, retroactively awarding you the Silver Star. Maya took the paper, but didn't look at it, and the detainees being debriefed and returned to their families. The operation at Compound B has been completely disavowed by higher command. They're claiming it was a rogue element. Convenient. Mitchell smiled slightly. Very, but the important thing is the truth is coming out. He leaned back in his chair. I'm also putting you in for a commendation for the Alpha Team extraction, though I suspect that will be the least of the recognition coming your way. Maya shook her head. I don't need recognition, sir. No, but you deserve it. A week later, Mia stood at attention in her dress uniform as the base assembled for a formal ceremony. The soldiers of Alpha Team lined up in formation along with the freed detainees who were well enough to attend. Colonel Mitchell read the citation detailing her actions, though the official record still omitted certain classified elements. As the ceremony concluded, Maya found herself approached by the young mechanic whose brother she had saved. My brother told me what really happened out there, he said, his voice low. How you went back in, not just once but multiple times. How you found those other prisoners when no one even knew they were there. Maya studied him for a moment. Some things you don't leave behind, she said simply. Is that why you did it even after what happened to you? After Kandahar? Maya looked across the base to where the horizon stretched into the distance, storm clouds gathering on the far mountains. Another mission, another day. Your brother would have done the same for me, she said. Any of them would. That's who we are. That's what we do. She turned away, moving toward the flight line where a newly arrived Blackhawk waited. Not a supply transport this time, but a combat aircraft with her name freshly painted beneath the pilot's window behind her. The young mechanic watched her go, then looked down at the patch she had returned to him, the one she had carried into the fire. It was scorched around the edges but intact, just like the pilot who had carried it. Some things you don't leave behind.